So, how do you think that women should adjust their nutrition and their training around their menstrual cycle?
When it comes to adjusting your nutrition and your training around your menstrual cycle, I like to kind of separate the menstrual cycle into two phases. It's actually separated into four, but to simplify things, we're going to think about the first half, days 0 to 14, and then from day 15 to 28 or 30, whatever the cycle length is. So the first half is called the follicular phase, and the second half is the luteal phase. And most women kind of train the same throughout the entire cycle, just like men, and that's what we've been told to do and kind of how we've been taught to do things. But if we actually understand how our body changes in terms of our physiology and how our body actually works throughout the cycle, it can be very, very empowering and very beneficial if we adjust our training and our nutrition accordingly. So in that first half of the cycle, we have estrogen rising, and estrogen is the main hormone here. And estrogen actually makes us a little bit more like men in terms of how our body works. So we are more stress resilient. This means that we can handle more stressful events such as fasting, such as higher intensity training sessions, longer training sessions, and an overall just higher training load. So what this means for our exercise is that this is a time that we want to hit the PRs in the gym. We want to push ourselves as much as possible. We want to schedule in those training sessions where we are pushing for our 1 rep max, or maybe doing hill sprints or high intensity interval training, or maybe you're an endurance athlete and you want to go for really long runs. This is the time to really do that. For our nutrition, I already mentioned this is a time that we can handle a little bit more fasting. So if intermittent fasting, some sort of fasting is something that you're wanting to incorporate in your diet or you feel good on, the follicular phase, the first half of your cycle, is where you really want to try and do that.
Sometimes I do get a lot of women who ask me about intermittent fasting and if it's something that they should look into. And I always advise them that it's something that you don't have to do all or nothing. So you don't have to do intermittent fasting every single day. You can opt for weeks on, weeks off. You can plan it around your menstrual cycle to ensure that you aren't putting any kind of additional stress on your body while you're trying to intermittent fast.
Another interesting thing when it comes to our metabolism in this follicular phase is we become more insulin sensitive. So that means that our body is more responsive to insulin, the hormone that rises in our body when we eat carbohydrates. And this means we have better blood sugar control overall. So when we eat carbohydrates, insulin rises and it takes the sugar out of our bloodstream and into our cells, and our body responds to that a lot quicker. So we don't have these massive blood sugar spikes and dips, kind of like a roller coaster throughout the day. We have a very stable blood sugar graph, which is really healthy and what we want to be optimally healthy. So what this also means for us is that we extract a lot more of the energy out of our carbohydrates that we eat, and we can put it into our muscles very rapidly to be used for exercise. And that is why this follicular phase is a time where we want to do those high intensity interval training sessions, lift heavy weights, and do those sort of exercise sessions that require a lot of glucose, a lot of carbohydrate to be fueled properly. Another very interesting thing about estrogen is that it increases our dopamine and serotonin in our brain, and that means we have greater neuromuscular control. So this is a really good time if you're wanting to do some skill work and work on some technique, perhaps for some sort of sport or team sports. Is a really good time to do that. Estrogen is also anabolic, which means muscle building. So if you are someone who's just started in the gym, or you're wanting to focus on gaining muscle mass for long-term health, especially if you are getting older, this is really something that you should be prioritizing. The follicular phase is when you're going to get most bang for your buck from your training sessions. So estrogen allows our bodies to respond to training a lot better and actually build our muscle after we've done some sort of resistance training. So we've just discussed the follicular phase, days 0 to 14. After that, we get the luteal phase. The luteal phase is when we're more stress sensitive. So this means our body is not really primed to handle a lot of high intensity work, long endurance training sessions. It's really time when we need to tone down the volume of our training and do things more restorative, relaxing, such as yoga. It might be long walks in nature, maybe some stretching, but this is really time to not push yourself and be a little bit more kind and patient to your body. You also might feel that you're a little bit more low on energy, and that's totally understandable and can really be explained by the hormones that are circulating in our body. So like I mentioned, estrogen being the predominant hormone in the follicular phase. In the luteal phase, we have progesterone starting to rise, and progesterone is now the dominant hormone playing a role here. Progesterone is pretty much the opposite of estrogen. The effects that estrogen has, it does the opposite. So progesterone has interesting effects on our body, especially when it comes to our nutrition. So the first thing is it actually increases our energy needs. So a lot of us might think that we have strange sort of cravings and we crave a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of food in this time. And that is explained because of progesterone. Progesterone makes us more insulin resistant. So contrast to the follicular phase where we're more insulin sensitive, we're now a little bit resistant to that insulin that rises in response to carbohydrates being eaten. And our blood sugar is a little bit less stable. So it spikes a little bit more because we're not bringing that glucose down in our blood as quick. So this means that we're not extracting as much energy from our carbohydrates, and that means we'll crave more food because we're wanting more energy to come in. And that's totally fine and understandable. And we actually need to listen to our body and give it what it needs. But that doesn't mean that we can eat any sort of carbohydrates. It's still very, very important to eat complex carbohydrates that are not going to be spiking our blood sugar and causing us to have a dip afterwards. So you want to think about whole grain, carbohydrates coming from vegetables, and that sort of thing.
I believe the reason why your body becomes more resistant to glucose uptake when progesterone is high in your body is obviously during pregnancy, progesterone is at its highest. And progesterone is trying to ensure that your body doesn't utilize all the glucose in your bloodstream so that it can still make its way to the fetus. The fetus is prioritized and it has the energy that it needs to grow. So if you are underfueling at all, your body's still going to make sure that your baby has everything that it needs to grow and develop as best as possible, which is also amazing. And also proves your body goes through so much stress when you're pregnant.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think also now is the next point about fat oxidation, so fat burning, actually becomes later in our luteal phase, and it ties in with what you've just said, because during pregnancy, and the reason we're talking about pregnancy is because the luteal phase is when your body is preparing for pregnancy. So it's in a state where it's now, okay, we need to batten down the hatches, keep all the energy on board, make sure that we're in a safe environment and able to carry another human. So when it comes to fat oxidation, our body looks to burning fat a little bit better in this phase so that it spares all of the carbohydrate to be used for fetus development. What that means for our exercise is that we can do long, low intensity, steady state exercise. So that's your easy bike rides, your easy run, easy walks, and our body's going to be burning fat really, really efficiently. So that's going to be really working to our advantage if you are an endurance athlete, or even if you're not, but getting in that zone 2 cardio or that low intensity cardio, which is really, really good for your heart, good for your brain, and just really good overall. So while the follicular phase is very good for pushing yourself, the luteal phase is really good for other things and can still benefit.
Because I'm just thinking, if I was in the shoes of an elite athlete, like imagine comparing yourself to your male counterpart and you literally have a whole week every single month where you physically cannot push yourself to the point like that men can push themselves to. So they've got 25% more opportunity to improve themselves every single month over women.
Another interesting thing that progesterone does is it actually increases our body temperature by about 0.5 degree. And that's why if you are tracking your menstrual cycle, you'll see that your body temperature does rise in the luteal phase. And this means that it actually makes exercise feel a little bit harder. So exercising at the same intensity, your body's going to be hotter and you're going to feel a little bit more fatigue. But that also means that our hydration is a little bit more important. So getting in enough fluid and water, and most importantly, getting enough electrolytes in while we are exercising during this phase. And then lastly, estrogen is very anabolic, like I mentioned already. So building up muscle and repairing muscle in our body, whereas progesterone has the opposite effects, a little bit more catabolic, meaning breaking down of muscle. So just having this in the back of your mind and being a little bit more cautious and aware of how much protein you're getting in each day, and making sure that you're getting enough so that you're mitigating or preventing that muscle breakdown response after exercise. So when it comes to thinking about supplements in the follicular phase versus the luteal phase, overall in the follicular phase, you want to support your body's energy output. It's able to do a lot more. So you want to make sure you have things like creatine. You want to have enough protein supporting your body. It's enabling it to recover from all the exercise that you might be doing. And you also want to get enough B vitamins to help your body actually metabolize and produce energy. In the luteal phase, things like recovery and mental calming or mental soothing are very, very important. As you are fully aware as a woman, during the luteal phase, as we lead up to the menstruation phase, we have a little bit more of a mood dip. So thinking of things like magnesium, vitamin D, and also some adaptogens like ashwagandha and rhodiola, and maybe some glycine and GABA, which can help to support your mood and enhance your mood as well. And then lastly, I also mentioned that our body temperature is much higher. So just getting enough electrolytes in the luteal phase is going to be very, very important.
The best way to try and track your cycle if you're not menstruating is to track your body temperature throughout the month to see if you are noticing any kinds of increases, how long those increases are for, and then you can start to gauge when you're ovulating and when you should be menstruating. And eventually a pattern should start to emerge, and then you can use that as a baseline to help you gauge where you are in your cycle. But at the end of the day, it is just really important to chat to your doctor, whether it's your GP or your gynecologist, to see whatever treatment you're going to be taking, to see how much it is going to impact your hormone. And you can make more informed choices when it comes to your training and when it comes to your nutrition, so that you don't have to feel lost and you don't have to be frustrated every single month.
Absolutely. I think the menstrual cycle is already such a complex thing, but it's something that's unique to everyone. I think the key message that we're trying to get across here is take control, sit in the driver's seat of your own health and start to track something, maybe just taking a journal every day and just seeing if there are any changes throughout your cycle, because we have a lot of hormones rising and dipping and fluctuating throughout the month. And it's really important to at least kind of see if there is some sort of cycle and just work with it and rather than against it. Okay, Deyna, so one of the next questions is around intermittent fasting. So is it something that we should do? Is it something that's going to disrupt our hormones? Who can benefit from it, and should we be doing it at all?
Now that is a fantastic question. I think intermittent fasting really did get quite a spotlight for a while, where everyone was saying it's the best thing that you can do, and everyone was trying to intermittent fast. And there are a few women that could benefit. So if you do have any kind of insulin resistance, or maybe you've been diagnosed with prediabetes or even type 2 diabetes, intermittent fasting has shown that it can improve insulin sensitivity, so it will help you regulate your blood sugar. And if you're a woman that maybe struggles with mindless snacking, or if you snack really late at night, sometimes just having a window can make you more mindful during the day, where you know that you can eat between this time and that time, and then outside of that time, you just know you're not supposed to eat now, and that can help you limit any kind of mindless snacking that you might do during the day. And then also women with any kind of digestive issues. So having periods where you can actually let your gut rest can really help with gut motility and addressing symptoms like bloating. So just that doesn't have to be a super long fast. Literally just 10 hours overnight is enough to really give your gut time to rest and digest. But if you're someone who is maybe pregnant, or if you've recently given birth and now you're breastfeeding, you really need to be quite careful with intermittent fasting, because you don't want to take part in any kind of caloric restriction. You need to have all the right nutrients to give to your baby as it's growing. And also breastfeeding increases your daily requirements, so you need to make sure that you're meeting those. And intermittent fasting can just make that a little bit more challenging. Also, as a dietitian, I always just advise women who have any kind of history of disordered eating, or if they've had an eating disorder in the past, be very cautious if you start establishing more food rules during your day, because it is easy to become obsessive over it, and it can lead to restriction in the future. So be mindful of it. Maybe work with a professional if you do know that you are susceptible to disordered eating, and then you can make sure that you're doing it safely. And then finally, women with hypothyroidism or any kind of adrenal fatigue or high stress, intermittent fasting can increase your cortisol. So this can also further dysregulate any kind of thyroid function and adrenal hormones. Another note that I just want to make is, if you are a really active woman, so you are participating in marathon training, or if you're a bodybuilder, or if you just exercise for more than 8 hours every week, then just be careful that if you do want to participate in intermittent fasting, or if you do want to start intermittent fasting, it will become more difficult to make sure that you're getting in enough nutrients to meet your needs.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like intermittent fasting can be something that's really beneficial for our health overall, but we should be kind of cautious as women when we start to do it. So if someone listening in wants to start experimenting with intermittent fasting, I think there is a time and a place for it. How can someone start, and what should they think about?
So I think if you're wanting to start with intermittent fasting, you feel like it is something that would benefit you personally, definitely start gently. So don't jump straight into an 18-hour fasting window. Try just fasting overnight, just having a defined border of at 8 p.m. I stop eating, and then tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. is when I start eating again. So start gently, start slowly, and then build your way up, find your sweet spot. So you must remember that when you are intermittent fasting, this is already putting a stressor on your body. So if you restrict your calories too much, it's just a double stressor. So make sure that you're getting enough calories in during your eating window, and prioritize proteins and fats. We also want to help balance our blood sugar, help regulate our hormones. Obviously, getting in enough protein is going to limit the amount of catabolism that's happening, and getting in high quality, healthy fats is also just going to make sure that our hormones have what they need in order to perform their best. And then finally, just sync with your cycle. So be gentle in your luteal phase, and in your follicular phase, you can push it a little bit more. And maybe just watch for the red flags. So if you've missed any periods, or if you're feeling fatigued, if you're experiencing any kind of hair loss, or even just feeling more cold than you usually feel, those are red flags. And that is something that maybe you want to stop intermittent fasting, or you need to look at how much you're eating every single day, because it's likely you're not eating enough.